Hello and welcome to VistaTalks, interesting discussions with interesting people from all around the world. I'm your host for today, Simon Hodgkins, and I'm delighted to be joined by Carolyn Kremins. Carolyn has played a key role in launching and rebuilding some of the most vulnerable brands in media business. She's known for her keen marketing insights and for devising a lot of winning business strategies. Carolyn, I know, has also streamlined operations, enhanced brands, visibility, and increased consumer demand with pioneering initiatives across digital, mobile, video, licensing, events, the list goes on, print platforms. And for people like Maxim, The Week, Brides, Condé Nast Traveller, and now Carolyn is the president of Skift, which is one of the most influential business intelligence marketing platforms in the world of travel and food and wellness. So I'm delighted you're joining us here on the show today, Carolyn. You're very welcome.
Thank you, Simon. Great to be here.
Very good. My goodness, I'm just, the mind is buzzing already with everything that you've been involved in and everything that you're doing now at Skift. And I'm hoping that this is a real interesting conversation for our audience, because the world of travel, unlike any other industry, has gone through one heck of a transformation in recent times. So we can get into that a little bit. But let's start, Carolyn, if I can, by asking you about your career path in the publishing industry. Let's talk about that for a moment. It's been nothing but astonishing. So can you tell me a little bit about how you first got into publishing and, you know, what you like about the industry?
Well, Simon, thanks for having me as a guest. I'm delighted to be here and to see you again. And that was some introduction, so thank you. But it all started when I was a teenager, about 12, 13 years old. I read a book that was titled Subliminal Seduction. I don't know if you remember that book. It was written by Wilson Bryan, and he was, it made quite a splash. And really investigating advertising and the subliminal messages behind it. And I was fascinated. I read it when I was 12 years old, so I was fascinated by it. So I knew that I had to be in advertising. That was something that just made a really big impact on me. So I graduated university, and I got my first job as an assistant media planner at a major advertising agency, Picon Belding, and I was offered $9,500 a year salary, $9,500, and I was thrilled, right? And so, you know, in that time frame, people were lining up around the corner. I was like, I'll take the job. So years later, or actually I should say just quickly thereafter, I transitioned from agency because I realized that's the last thing I wanted to do was work in an advertising agency. I transitioned into sales, and I worked for many well-known brands, and quickly, you know, went through that path of growing into leadership. And then I became the launch publisher of Maxim. And, you know, that was laddie magazines in the UK were, you know, somewhat common, but in the United States, we did not have that genre of magazine. And as soon as Felix Dennis, the founder, approached me and a small group of people, we just thought, oh my God, this is going to be amazing because nothing like this exists. And we launched the magazine back in 1998, and it just took off like wildfire. We had unprecedented success. And then after 6 years of building that brand to 2 million subscribers, not readers, subscribers, and people who bought it from the newsstand. I then launched another one of his magazines called The Week, which is a news weekly that was aimed at executives. And then I went actually back over to Condé Nast and was the publisher of many of their brands. So, you know, during that time, I then went from magazines and transitioned into digital media because I saw the writing on the wall for magazines. And I worked on one of their brands called Epicurious. And, you know, so it's been quite a journey, I should say.
That's incredible. And I love the fact that you referred to them as readers, and we all talk about subscribers today, don't we? But back then they were readers, right?
Not only that, 75% of the magazines were bought on newsstand. Like,
Right.
so you think
Incredible.
full price, like, it was a
Yeah.
cash cow for sure. Yeah, we made Felix a lot of money.
And you mentioned Felix Dennis there, and anybody in the publishing world would know Felix Dennis. I remember reading his book. He brought a book out, was it about 5 years ago, maybe a bit more than that now. But he had some very interesting products and services, everything from posters to full-on publishing. And he made quite a name for himself at the time. And it's interesting, isn't it, how the publishing industry has changed and developed, and your move, as you said, then brought you into digital. And I'm reminded of another gentleman, Tyler Brule, over at the Monocle. I don't know if you're familiar with that. I'm
Yeah,
sure you
of
are.
course. I love what he does. Yeah.
Yeah, and like he's really championing print media. He's opened up newsstands. He's got his own coffee shop, sort of kiosk and stores where he's selling print publishing. But he's, I think they're over 10 years. There must be over 10 years now. And what he's done with print publishing and traditional print media at a time where the industry did see a sharp decline to digital, he's really championed a path. I notice a lot of the digital assets to what they're doing at that group have improved over recent years. But that's been a good one to watch. So thank you for taking us through that journey.
Yeah.
It's incredible. And the titles that you've been involved in, everybody knows them, right? Whether it's
Yeah.
Maxim or Condé Nast, they're known the world over. But let me talk a little bit, just one more question on publishing before we get into some other topics. There's a lot of different elements in publishing, right? So you've got fashion, you've got sports, you've got technology. And obviously, you sort of got into that travel and that gastronomy type area. So was there any passion or rhyme or reason to that? Or was it just the great opportunity came along at the right time?
Yeah, no, that's my passion. That's my personal passion, right? So I've been really fortunate working in the various sectors or industries, I should say, from fashion. I was at Elle magazine, I was at Brides, I was at the Newsweekly and Laddie and magazines. But when it comes to travel, I'm a very passionate traveler. Since I, again, was a little girl, like my earliest memory was just, I couldn't wait to take our family trips. And we didn't have a lot of money growing up. So our family trips were always in the car, driving somewhere. I didn't get on a plane until I was in my 20s, and I had to pay my own airfare to take a trip down to Florida with a friend for spring break. But anyway, I just loved to go anywhere. We would go drive somewhere, we would stay at a Holiday Inn. And to me, that was like the best thing ever. So travel was always in my blood. And even today, anywhere I go, it can be long haul, it could be close by, I could bus, train, fly, I'm in. And I think the thing about that, and by the way, I've been to 7 continents and almost twice. When I hit Australia again, that will be ×2. So, so I'm a passionate traveler. So when having the opportunity, when I was at Condé Nast, I was working on Brides, and most of the work that I did in publishing was always about turning around venerable brands or launching brands from the ground up. That's what I love to do, is to build brands or course correct them. But when I was at Brides, I had done the work that they asked me to do, but I was never like passionate about the whole genre of bridal. I was never that girl that like dreamt of getting married and planning every detail. That wasn't me. So when I finished what they asked me to do, I approached our CEO and I said, I'm done with this. Like, where can I go from here? And he said, where do you want to go? And I said, Condé Nast Traveller. And lo and behold, that was my first foray in terms of taking my personal pleasure and then connecting it to the business. And it was amazing. It was really, truly amazing, to travel the world as the executive at Condé Nast Traveller. I saw things, met people that were amazing. Shortly thereafter, I again saw the writing on the wall, and I knew I had to get that digital experience. So I raised my hand to go over to Epicurious, because that was a pure digital play. And it was also food, which I'm also a very passionate foodie. And, they're both connected so deeply, because, some people travel and they do it through the lens of art or design. When I travel, it's food first, right? Like 24 hours into my trip, I'm at the local food market. I'm walking down the aisles of the supermarket. I'm asking the taxi drivers where's the best place to eat. So that, seeing the culture and understanding the way locals live through food, to me, makes so much sense. So that's really the passion and the connection between food and travel, and why I kind of push my career into those areas.
That's lovely, and I suppose the food and the travel, it really does immerse you in a culture, doesn't it? You get a real immersion in the local culture, which is a wonderful thing. It certainly does, as they say, broaden the mind, doesn't it?
It definitely does. And just one last thing on that is that I recently, about 2 years ago, I was in Dubai, and I took I was there with my family, and we were recommended by a local to go to this like working man's lunch kebab restaurant, really off the beaten track. And when we were in there, and so I'm with my two blonde daughters, myself and my husband, and every other person in there was, a local, someone from the region, and all, dressed in their traditional wear. And there we were, the three blonde women, and the Americans at the table. But they couldn't have been nicer. The owner came over. He was so excited, and talking about New York and where we live. And we were asking them about their culture. And we stayed there for hours. And that's, to me, like, that's a great slice of what travel and the connection to food and local and learning about culture. It was something I'll never forget.
That's wonderful. And so you mentioned Epicurious there, epicurious.com, and like you were the senior vice president and general manager at Condé Nast Digital, right? But you're responsible then for this complete overhaul of the Epicurious brand and positioning, if I'm right in saying that. So, pushing unique visitors there to what was at the time its highest level. Is that correct in sort of the time that you were there? And you quadrupled or significantly saw a huge spike in revenue growth as well in that sort of 18-19 year history. Would I be right in saying that, Carolyn?
Yeah.
So I mean, as a marketeer, obviously I'm interested in those elements, because that's significant spikes and sustained growth for that brand and the positioning. And when you look back on that time, was there any key, for our audience too, was there any key activities or strategies that you would have deployed at the time that you think were, when you look back now retrospectively, said that was actually what delivered that growth? And, maybe some of the challenges that you had to overcome, because going from, where you were, and you were talking earlier about starting from the ground up and working from scratch, but you saw significant change in that brand.
Yeah, as I mentioned before, is that one of the things that I love to do is to turn brands around. So I was at Condé Nast again. I was seeing where the magazine industry was going, and I knew I had to get into digital. And there was a and I didn't lead Condé Nast Digital. I was really at that point just leading the Epicurious digital brand and putting together all of the food brands underneath that. But I knew I had to get some learning under my belt when it came to digital. And there was this brand, Epicurious, that was this venerable brand, but it launched in the 90s, right? Like, so think about that. Like, that was before like anything was digital, right? And it was a bunch of recipes. But the one thing that I recognized is that it had huge brand equity. Everyone knew Epicurious. Anyone who cooked knew the brand Epicurious. But the company, Condé Nast, never really invested much into the brand. So they kind of let the brand just go on and go on and go on. And so there was no investment in it. So I got into sort of the weeds. I went under the hood, and I was able to see how like easy it would be to rebuild the brand and to bring it from where it had been to where it could go. And first of all, it was a platform built upon a platform built upon a platform. It was just like a train wreck. So the first thing we did was we just, went down to the nails, and we rebuilt the the hardware, if you will. So that was the biggest challenge, was, getting the right people on board and the vision behind, where we saw it could go. The other thing is that everyone and their mother had a recipe and was online. It was a highly competitive time. Like the food, like it was like a food explosion online. So we knew that like we had to try to be different, that we couldn't just be all about just the recipes itself. So the company made a couple of acquisitions that added utility to the site. So we built in a shopping list capability. We built in a recipe box capability. So all of a sudden you now have these recipes, and there were so many. We had Gourmet, which had since folded, Gourmet Magazine, Bon Appetit, and Epicurious itself. So we had thousands of recipes, but now added the utility part to it. And then eventually changed out a lot of the photography. We added video into it. We added a lot of how-to. So all of that really helped take that brand from being like this dusted up old brand to really adding some great contemporary, modern, look, feel, and actually utility. So that was really fun to do, and we had a great team there, and it was really fun to turn that around.
That's brilliant. I love hearing that, because it takes somebody with the foresight to realize the value of the asset that's sitting there. And as you say, you go from train wreck to this really important sector. And then when you bolt on the utility, aspects to it, it really does turn into a rocket ship of a property.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And I mean, it's fantastic. And as you say, though, you had to pare it right back down to even the fundamentals of the back end infrastructure that it was sitting on, how, layers on top of layers, to really strip it back and then build out from there. And I think, anybody listening to this knows that the food sector online, it's just huge. It's absolutely huge. And it's a real passion, and it's a real culture, a movement of people that really do to this day speak about those titles, so it's great to hear about that success. I'm sure it was a lot more difficult and a lot more challenging than you've maybe conveyed to me here, Carolyn, because I'm sure that's not easy behind the scenes, right?
No, plenty of sleepless nights, that's for sure.
Well, look, there's a couple of things I want to squeeze in here, because I wanted to talk about, you were named by Advertising Age, another really, global title, as a woman to watch, and you were highlighted as one of the most influential women in media, which is fantastic, and that was by Folio. So you've been named 5 times, I believe, by Adweek and Ad Age Hot List for titles like Condé Nast Traveller that you mentioned, but also Cookie and the Week, Stuff, of course, Maxim. Could you just maybe tell me a little bit about that? Because that's a fantastic little trophy cabinet there you have, Carolyn.
Thank you. The recognition is great, but that is really a reflection purely of the team and the people that I surrounded myself with. And I've been really, really fortunate. And I think that, if anyone asks me about the key to my success, it's really about building a fantastic team, and that team also needs to be able to work in harmony with one another, right? So it's not just about getting the right people, but the right people who can collaborate, and also, not to sit on top of them, like empower your team. Like if they're the best and that's why you brought them on board, then give them the ability to live out the same vision and work in lockstep. And to empower them. So really, I do think that all of that is 100% a team effort, and that's how I got there. And I'm most proud of everyone there.
Well, that's lovely to hear. And I mean, it is, I'm reflecting back on what we said earlier when we got talking about your start in publishing, when you got that first job offer at the value that you described, to go from that sort of, if I dare say, humble beginning in the publishing world, to then being sort of called, one of the most influential women in media. That's a huge journey, isn't it? But you had to start somewhere, right? Everybody starts somewhere, and you
Yeah.
meet interesting people along the way, I'm sure.
Yeah, and I have to say, Simon, I think it's really important in life to stay humble. I think you brought up a good point, because you can't get lost in it all, and you have to always, to me, you have to always remember who you are, where you came from, and try to get back along the way. So
100%, it's
yeah,
really important.
yeah,
And
yeah.
so, Carolyn, hopefully our audience now, they understand a little bit about the background, the publishing, some of the great titles that you've been involved in, some of the passions around international travel and food and culture, and that, hopefully that's telling a story in its own right. And now I want to get on to really the thing that I've been itching to talk about, because the last time I think you and I met in person, it was with yourself and with Rafat from Skift.
Yeah.
And I just want to talk a little bit about Skift in detail. So I'm very familiar with it, of course, but I know some people listening may not be as familiar with it as you and I are, for sure. So could you tell people about the Skift universe, what's involved at Skift? And then maybe we can go from there into a discussion about the last couple of years, the pandemic, how that shifted the strategies, and where Skift's at today. Because anybody who's been in the travel industry, for sure, would know Skift. But maybe could you just tell people, first of all, a little bit about the Skift universe, if you don't mind?
Absolutely, be happy to. That's what I love to do the most, is talk about Skift. And Skift, I'll just start from the very beginning, is that the word itself, a lot of people don't know the meaning of the word Skift, which is a Nordic word. And it actually means shift and change and transformation. And that's what we do as a business. We're reporting on the business of travel, and we're reporting exactly on that very thing, the shifts and the changes and the transformation that's happening in the industry every day. So again, we're a media company reporting globally across sectors. So we cover every sector within travel. And essentially, the makeup of the company is comprised of the editorial team, which is doing this reporting. And it's not only what's happening today, but also we are very much looking at the trends that we see happening in the next 1 to 2 years and reporting on those. Our audience is made up of the senior level C-suite of the industry. And these are the very people who have to future-proof their own companies. So they are looking to Skift to understand not only what's happening across sector, but also to understand where the trends and where the industry is going. So we've positioned ourselves very much to be that authority and resource for the leaders of our industry. We also have a very robust research studio. We put out 40 plus reports a year. We have a lot of data tracking that we offer the industry, a lot of analysis. These are subscription products. And in fact, our content now is a subscription product as well. And we also produce events. We have 10 Skift events a year. This is a way where we can bring the very readers who are coming to Skift together in a forum, and it's a creative conference, and we get leaders who are running big companies, we get leaders who are doing creative things, and it becomes this really like great networking and learning opportunity. And then at the center of it all, we have our content studio, and this is SkiftX, and this is where we work with partners, and we help them tell their story in a very Skifty way. And we help them amplify their messaging, whether it be externally to the industry. So we do a lot of internal work for our clients, of research. So we have a full working agency within Skift as well.
Wow. I've been to a Skift, events, and they are truly world class. They're absolutely phenomenal. And the Skift reports that you mentioned as well, as a recipient of quite a number of Skift reports over the years, the level of information and the level of quality it's really high. It's really high. And I think for anybody, like I still to this day wax lyrical about Skift. And if you're in the travel or any related industry at all, you have to be tuned into Skift, because your events, they're not just people from travel. It's the A-list travel
Yeah.
community. It's the biggest names in travel that you have on stage, that you have relationships with, where a lot of these insights, I'm sure, come from. And it reads to me, it's like the who's who of travel. It's incredible.
Yeah, thank you for that. But I also want to say that it's not just who we have on stage. It really, I give all the credit to our editorial team, because they're not afraid to go there, meaning that they'll get the biggest executive on stage, the CEO of any major company, and they have full authority to go and ask whatever they want, and they challenge the executives. And we've heard over and over again from CEOs, I won't mention names, who say, like, I really have to prepare to go on your stage, because they know that we're going to call them out if there's something or a question that needs to be answered. We're going to go there. So I think that's what so quickly built our authority and credibility, is that we're not part of the travel industry. We're reporting on the travel industry. And that allows us to really do the kind of work and to have the kind of conversations that our audience really looks to. And I think that's a huge difference. And we're the only one who really does that in the industry. And I truly believe it's the editorial team that really does, again, have the kind of guts to go in there and the confidence, and we get the answers.
No, absolutely. And I've seen that firsthand at the event, where there's an open mic session, and the CEOs from the biggest travel brands on the planet are being asked really tough questions, and but I think that's where the value is, right? That's where the value, that's where I get the value from, because we're asking the questions. The audience, the Skift community, is asking the questions that people actually want the answer to. It's not just it's not just a piece that's been put out by corporate speech from the corporate entity. It's really, as I think you used the term earlier, it's really under the hood of what's going on. And I think to me, that's where the value is.
Right. It's not a gotcha, but it's really just like, let's like, what were you thinking, and how did it work for you? And it's all about that. Yes.
So in terms of Skift, then, with everything that you've got going on in the universe, what about this remote working model now? Have you been global constantly, and everybody's been remote in Skift, or how did it work? I mean, the studio, is it in New York? Like, how are things working for you, and how did it impact? How did this whole having to go fully remote impact things like the huge events that you were running, and what was your strategy during the last year or two?
Yeah. So, listen, everyone, didn't matter what industry you were in, you were hit by the pandemic, right? So no one was left untouched with that, but no industry was hit harder than travel. I mean, just think about it. There were airplanes not on tarmacs, they were in the desert, right? And the hotels were empty and being used for first responders, right? Like nothing like this. We have not witnessed anything ever like this in our lifetime, right? And I really have to give our founder, who Raffaele, the credit here, because as soon as this hit, we did two things. We moved really fast, right? And we went right into survival mode. So what I mean by that is that we looked at our business. We made deep cuts, meaning like we cut more than we thought we may have to. And we had probably 2 months at March and April of 24/7 executive meetings of like, what are we going to do? How are we going to do this? And I think those two factors in terms of moving fast and making those deep cuts, that saved our business. That was really important. And I think that was probably the biggest learning, was to move early and go deep. we also at that time made the decision, our lease in New York was coming up, and we talked about what it would be, given that we're in the travel industry, to create this globally distributed company, meaning that why not let our employees, we're in the travel business, we're global, why not let our employees work remotely, give them latitude to go where they want, and that actually could be a benefit, to us all. So we did that. So we closed our office in New York, we closed an office in London, we had a small place in Singapore, we closed everything. And all of a sudden we started seeing employees move out of New York and go to Oregon or Colorado, or I'm in Miami right now. Who would have thought I would be in Miami? Not me, for sure. But we made that decision, and it's hard. I mean, it's like, first of all, let me not forget the best part, which is we survived. And not only did we survive, last year, we had the best profits that we ever had. And we're in our 10th year. This is our 10th anniversary year. So last year was the most profitable we've ever been. And this year, the momentum is like we've taken off. So honestly, it's been our entire team has given blood. It's been really hard. But we, to now see, to look behind and to see where we've been, and then to see where we're going, it's like, it's really rewarding. Yeah, exactly.
I'm just thinking about that, which is why I'm pausing, because you're right. I mean, obviously, we're sort of in the global content game, and the business that I've been involved in, fortunately, didn't see that same impact. It was growing and booming pre-pandemic, and the pandemic actually speeded it up. It was almost an accelerant, and things have never been better, never been busier. But it is incredible to see how the profitability grew and how you've actually turned the corner and come out of it probably a stronger, better company.
No question. No question.
Which is great to hear. And I was thinking about the founder of Airbnb, Brian Chesky, who's, he's actually running that global business, but he's actually living in, I think he's taken a year to live in Airbnb properties around the world, just to get better insight into his own company. And he's used the sort of benefit of a year to really reflect on where the business is going. And I think it's incredible to see something like Skift, how you've actually adapted. Agility, I think you put a lot of it down to making the decisions early and fast. And we hear that a lot. If you can make the tough, hard decisions quickly, it often leads to a much faster resolution, and you can see the light at the end of the tunnel a lot quicker than possibly others who are not quite sure. But what does that mean for Skift now then, Carolyn? Because we're, depending on where you are in the world, of course, at the time of recording this, some people are sort of almost back to normal. Travel, I think, is booming in lots of parts of the world. What does it look like for Skift? What's next for Skift? What's on the horizon?
Yeah, so as I mentioned, we're off to a very strong start, and hopefully there's nothing lurking in the background that we don't know about, but hopefully we'll be well prepared if there is, and something that we can deal with. But right before the pandemic, in the years prior to that, we made a couple of acquisitions. We acquired a brand called EventMB, which specializes in the event and meeting technology business that attracts meeting planners. And then we also acquired another brand called Airline Weekly, obviously in and around airlines. And the last acquisition we made was DLR, which is the Daily Lodging Report. It's read by every CEO, hospitality leader, just to find out who's doing what in the industry. And then obviously, the pandemic hit. So, we're sort of back on, and we're looking at more acquisitions, looking at ways to continue to build Skift as a global player, and and to continue to be the foremost authority that the industry turns to to learn about what's happening. And yeah, so that's our focus right now.
In-person events, Carolyn, are they back on?
Oh yes, of course. So we're excited about a new event that we're adding to our, well, a couple of new events. The first is the future of lodging. There's so much. We used to have a hospitality event, and then we had a short-term rental event, and we've started to think about like that like the consumer doesn't think about that anymore. They think they're going to go away. Where are they going to stay? It's about the accommodations. So we're putting together a 2-day event. It will be in May in New York. All the events we do will have a hybrid. It will be hybrid, meaning that there'll be a virtual element. That was a big learning during the pandemic. I mean, all of our events went virtual, and we really stepped up the number of events we did to keep the community together. But now when we do a physical event, we can have a larger footprint by having other people from around the world tuning in as well if they can't travel there. So Future of Lodging is coming up in May. The other new event that we're adding to our roster is the Skift Global Forum East. So we have our flagship event in New York in September, but we are going to be launching an event in along with Dubai Tourism in Dubai in December. And there's so much happening in that region. It's really exciting, and we're thrilled to be going into that region then. And then, just next up on the docket is right in your neighborhood. We're going to be the Skift Forum Europe, which will be on March 24th in London. Hope that you'll come over and hang with us for a bit. And yeah, so events are going strong now.
Yeah, that's really great to hear, Carolyn.
Yeah.
That's really great to hear.
Yeah.
Well, is there anything else that we haven't touched on in relation to travel? I just wanted to as well maybe comment on something you said there about the hybrid element to events going forward. It's amazing, isn't it, how even in some of the events that we run ourselves, you can actually reach a broader audience, or maybe attract people that probably wouldn't have come to an event before from a different part of the world. Have you found that?
Yeah, I mean, listen, the way I look at it is that the virtual event is a feeder into the physical event. And, if you can get someone who maybe wouldn't have flown to that destination and they can hear you virtually, and then they can see the excitement, then next event, potentially they'll make that physical trek to wherever we are. And so I really think that it, from where I sit, I think the more people we can touch, the more people who can be informed on the industry, the better we are, whether they come in person or not. Of course, I always like to see everyone and meet everyone, and that's the best part of my job, is the industry itself. I've never been, like I mentioned earlier, I've been in so many different industries. Nothing beats travel. It's the kindest, most wonderful, curious, knowledgeable people that you'll ever find. And this is where I'll stay for the rest of my career, in the travel space.
That's lovely. So, Carolyn, is there anything that we haven't touched on today, or is there anything else you'd like to add before we wrap up today?
Simon, I think this has been a really fun conversation. I really enjoyed speaking with you, and I think I said it all.
Do you know what? We've covered such a lot of ground.
We did.
In a short space of time.
Yeah, the coffee has helped.
Well, listen, it's been an absolute pleasure catching up with you today. Look, that brings us to the end nicely of the show today with Carolyn Kremins from Skift. And please make sure that you tune in again to a future VistaTalks, where once again we hope to be meeting with some interesting people from all around the world. So, Carolyn, thank you very much. It's an absolute pleasure to catch up with you today.
Thank you, Simon. Always good to see you and to talk. Take care.
Thanks, Carolyn.
Bye.